So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carlos Zelikit. For our students, this is a great opportunity to see who has authored your skills textbook. So your 525 basic skills textbook, which goes through the micro skills, the core foundational skills of counseling. Here he is in person, and we'll be talking about skills today. So, Dr. Zelikit, if you'd like to give a little introduction about yourself, we would greatly appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And we indeed will be talking about what is it that uh, learning our skills means. But before that, let me say I'm a person with a hat. And I apologize for that, not a sign of disrespect, but just a way to protect my eyes from the beautiful, although foggy, but very bright day we have. And so I will appreciate your understanding. Metaphorically, I will say hats off to you for being here. Thank you for your interest in such an important topic. As Dr. Paitel said, my name is Carlos Salaket, and I'm a professor in the counselor education program at Penn State. I'm also the president of the Pennsylvania Mental Health Counselors Association, and I have had a number of different leading roles. And I mention this not to brag, but to indicate that I've been around and I've learned a lot. One of my major quests has been working on what is it that helps people change and who does a good job in accomplishing that. So today, I have the privilege of presenting with Dr. Kelly Paitel and also with this is beginning of the semester, so my students keep calling. My apologies for that. I'm just turning them off. So presenting with me Dazzle Wang, a wonderful researcher and counselor. And so this trio will hopefully provide you with relevant information, something that will make you understand our field and our mission in a better way. So I think I have control of the screen, so I'm going to move to the next one. Nope, that didn't happen. Can you move it, Dr. Paitel?
Yeah, do you want me to give you slide control or do you want me?
Yeah, I will be. That will be great. Got it?
Do you got it?
I'm trying to see if it works. Nope, and no. Ha, that's okay. If you can go to the next one, will be greatly appreciated.
Sure.
So today, we would like to accomplish three main objectives, that you as a participant will be able to list foundational skills of effective counseling and therapy. Second, participants will be able to describe and apply 5 evidence-based adaptations and accommodations that improve the quality of the therapeutic relationship. And last but not least, participants will be able to report the outcomes of effective intervention. Having said that, there is a main goal also, which is allow my colleagues, Dr. Paitel and Counselor Wang, to introduce themselves when the time comes. Next. So I go around the country and the world, and I stand on different platforms, and I ask this question: is counseling effective? And what do you think is the most typical answer I get. The answer is, it depends. More importantly, the answer is, well, uh, hmm, let me think about that one. And then I get into platforms with people who are leading the field, and they will say, we need more research to find out if it works. We are not doing enough. Next. So one of the things that caught my attention in terms of effectiveness, and sorry that I smile, but this is something that we rarely talk about. You know, every one of our clients, whether it's seen by a professional counselor, whether it's seen by a counselor in training, in practicum or internship, come to see us after many important conversations about their issues. They talk up, with their friends, their colleagues, their brothers and sisters, father and mother, if they have them, partners, you name it. They don't get to us as a first choice. Furthermore, if you think about it, some studies have demonstrated that, for example, for some people, it takes about 7 years to begin to talk about symptoms of depression, realizing that they may have depression, figuring out that there are people who may help them with this particular mental health concern, and then finding the person to approach. So clients come to us after multiple conversations. And a lot of times, and I share this with my students, jokingly, of course, please keep that in mind. I will say, and they come to see us at training clinics. Well, guess what? They are coming to see a counselor in training that usually see a real client for the first time, the first week or second week of practicum. What are the chances that this particular counselor in training can offer a healthier path towards resolution, towards improvement, towards becoming, a transformed person again? Now, let's not talk about professional counselors. Let's talk about counselors in training. Will they be able to really make a difference? And then extend this to professionals. Are we able to make a difference? Next one, please. Well, what do you know? The answer to is counseling effective is not it depends. Think about this. Of course, there is no counseling intervention or counselor work that is 100% effective. That's not the way you prove effectiveness. Furthermore, there is no one size that fits all. So even if you have a very effective model or theory or intervention, it won't help everybody. That's not the way we evaluate effectiveness. We evaluate effectiveness by the preponderance of the data. And what we have by now is information that tell us that more than 80% of clients or patients, depending on the denomination you prefer, receiving psychological treatment, counseling treatment, are better than those who do not receive treatment. Yeah, there is a placebo effect, and the ones who do not receive treatment improve to the tune of about 30 to 33%, but not to the tune of 80%. Second, there is evidence that that rate of success is more effective than many evidence-based mental health medical practices. It's also less expensive, produces fewer negative side effects, dropouts, and recidivism, Many clients reach a full level of recovery and maintain it over time. Therapy can increase a sense of wellness, self-healing, and fulfillment. So it's not just improving on the symptomatology of the main concern. That improvement reaches other dimensions of human wellness. So when you look at that information, that is telling us that our way of communicating is transformational. Let's go back to the beginning. These clients have had multiple conversations, and I'm sure that many of their partners, friends, fathers, mothers, colleagues, whatever, co-workers have provided well-intentioned suggestions for solutions, for improvement, for change, and yet they were not successful. But we have evidence that this conversation called counseling and psychotherapy is. And we know that now we can talk about what is it that is in there, what we have defined as the language of transformation. Foundational to that language are the microskills. And you can say, oh yeah, well, you write or co-write books about the microskills. What are you going to say? I remember having lunch with Albert Ellis, and I said to him, so Al, what's the most effective therapy that there is? And he looked at me and he said, what a silly question. REBT, of course. He was the leading figure of REBT. So you can say, oh, here is this Latinx guy bragging about the microskills. And the answer to that is, yeah, I do. But we have a humongous amount of evidence from multiple platforms indicating that the microskills are effective. So let's talk about the microskills. And for that, I have a wonderful leader in the field. Dr. Paitel, we are all yours.
Thanks, Dr. Zelikit. I'm excited to see so many of our students here today. For those who don't know me and are new to our conference this year, I'm Dr. Kelly Paitel. I'm with our CU CMHC program, and I have the honor and pleasure of presenting with Dr. Zelikit today, who is the leader in the field when it comes to microskills. But what are microskills? And what are microskills and why are they important? We have a wide range of audience members. Some of our students are new and may not have even taken our basic skills class yet. I know a lot are also advanced and in the field. And I know I'm one who, in practice, I don't think as much about these anymore as I did being a brand new student. But it's really, really important that after my sessions with clients, I do, because microskills are foundational communication and relational techniques that we can use as counselors. They're helping to build the therapeutic relationship by building rapport in a comfortable environment and driving the therapeutic process. When counselors use these skills, they're using them to connect and understand and interact with their clients. And each of these skills is valuable to the counseling process, but true effectiveness happens when counselors can combine them into a comprehensive skill set to reach the goals for therapy. And the microskills framework, this alludes back to what Dr. Zelikit said earlier, they are effective. And in fact, the microskills framework can be considered a theory in itself, in which the counselor and the client work together to enable the construction of new stories. And that usually is accompanied by changes in thoughts, feelings, and actions. So this next slide, we see the hierarchy of microskills, which refers to a structured order of specific skills considered foundational for effective counseling, each skill builds upon another, really allowing for a counselor to progressively engage with a client in an intentional manner. So, this particular visual outlines the steps involved in intentional counseling through a series of progressively complex skills. So it starts with easier skills such as attending behaviors, and then it moves towards more advanced interventions like empathetic confrontation and interpretation. And we'll look at a few examples on the next slides. So starting really at the bottom, we want to talk about our listening skills, our active listening skills. These don't need to be used in a specific order, but they all ensure that the counselor is carefully listening to client stories. Empathetic understanding and careful listening are valuable in all areas of human communication, and that goes back to that slide with all of those pictures of people talking. So counselors are using these skills, and people who aren't counselors are also using these skills because it's so important to be able to listen in our daily life. And teaching the social skills of listening has become a standard and common part of counseling because the skills can be adapted to meet clients' needs and support clients. Some examples are shown here on the slide, but we'll show a few more on the following slides. So encouraging. Part of the listening sequence is encouraging, which should be used throughout the session to support clients and help them provide specifics about their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors. These are short responses that help clients keep talking. I know in my basic skills class, my advanced skills class, I'm always saying, do more encouragers. Like it's so easy to get stuck in session and just sit there or just bob your head. And these may be verbal, so you can repeat keywords or short statements from your client, or they could be nonverbals like I used before, head nodding, smiling. Some examples are shown here on the screen, but typically in a lot of the counseling videos, we see the yes, yes, one keywords of like sadness, to keep encouraging that dialogue. Summarizing, another skill. In the therapeutic session, this helps bring order and it works to make sense of client conversation. It facilitates executive functioning and emotional regulation. We want to be able to summarize our clients' comments and integrate thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When we use summarizing, it's helping a client organize the story more effectively through kind of that modeling. And when clients can organize the story more effectively, we see growth in their executive functioning and better decision making. Joey here at the bottom of the slide in green is an example, but a summary was used in this case to help wrap up the session where Joey and his counselor identified exploring anxiety as a goal for therapy, and that wrapped up the session so nicely and provided them with a really great transition to the next time that they'll work together in the next session. And then the last example that we'll provide here, we're getting into some of the more difficult skills here, especially for beginning counselors and training programs. But as we're moving up that micro skills hierarchy, we have reflection of feeling. With reflecting feelings, you are communicating that you understand the emotions. These can be conscious or unconscious, but that are accompanying the content, thoughts, or experience that your client is sharing. It's helping when we reflect, it helps our clients to grow more aware of their feelings. They want to share more because they feel more connected in the therapeutic relationship. And it's also a way to normalize their feelings so that they do not feel like they are alone in them. So many of our clients come to us because they don't have someone in their lives who is validating and able to normalize their experiences. And helping clients sort out complex emotions is an important part of counseling. A lot of times, clients may come in and they just can't identify right now an emotion. And that's where it's so important to go back to those listening skills and be able to express in your own words the feelings stated or implied. And as you're reflecting feelings, you're also modeling for clients how to express emotions. So even I know some of my students say, "Oh, I don't want to reflect feelings because I could be wrong." But that's okay. Even when you're incorrect in identifying emotion or feelings from your clients, reflecting feelings can be so powerful. So on the slide, we see Hannah, sounds like you feel hurt by your boyfriend's behavior. You're so relieved to be taking some space away from him. This is an example of a client who is probably sharing so much information about their relationship, but just really struggling to identify feelings, or maybe they did identify feelings and you're reflecting those back. They're feeling hurt, they're feeling relieved. Um, so we we have to start here to understand micro skills, to now be able to transition into understanding adaptations and accommodations that can improve the quality of the therapeutic relationship.
Take it a step back to the title slide, because I would like to do a little bit. Yeah, thank you so much. And so we understand that these core skills build a transformational language and interaction, a process that helps clients change. And of course, you will say, so how do you know? You already mentioned that there are some other studies and all that. Yes, there are. But we also have our own studies, and we will review them before the end of this presentation. But before we get there, it was interesting because, number one, the micro skills are used, yeah, in different degrees, but they are used by every theoretical counseling process and theory. So that we define it, help build a better relationship with the client. Now, we have been working for a number of years in developing a better understanding of what works and reaching this pinnacle of conceptualization called the micro skills. But in that process, researchers from different theories came forward saying, hey, theories are important, but the relationship is even more important. In fact, the relationship is the biggest contributor, the therapeutic relationship, the biggest contributor to client outcome. And then several of them, including John Norcross, for example, came up with what they call evidence-based relationship building elements. So at that point, we took a step back and we said, this is fascinating. Think about how powerful the micro skills are. We understand they contribute to the relationship, but what if we integrate some of these new findings into the work that our counselors do? And we realized, doing a sort of a survey of syllabi from multiple programs, that we all focus on theories, but we don't focus on relationship building elements. So I encourage you to add that to your programs or to ask your faculty to add it. And I separate them just for the sake of presentations, I separated them into two major dimensions: accommodations and adaptations. Now, this is fascinating because you have the counselors and the counselors in training walking into this relationship called counseling equipped with a great transformational language. Can you imagine if you add additional things? Now, this is what that image may look from my point of view. We were doing great as counselors. We were using evidence-based practices. But remember, the studies of evidence-based practices demonstrated that many practices are effective for the same type of disorders. Second, none of those theories and practices are effective for all disorders. You know what we say, no size fits all. You know, there is no one size that will help you to help everybody. So all of a sudden, we took a turn for the better. And we went from evidence-based practices with the consequences that I just described to client-based evidence. What that means is what work for this particular client with this particular issue under these particular conditions. In other words, we are now at a stage where we can tailor the interventions to the specific client. When I say that to my students, they go, okay, first, I only have the micro skills. So what do you want me to do as a practicum student seeing a client for the first time? And second, now you want me to tailor the treatment to the client? How in the world am I going to do that? Well, guess what? On the next, hopefully 5 to 10 minutes, I will try to describe what we know and how we can use that to accomplish what I just said. So next, let's begin with relationship building, the what I call accommodations. And of course, you're going to see some of this and you go, oh, they are similar to the micro skills. Didn't I say that the micro skill was a way to improve the relationship? Yes. And so first, empathy. Now, keep this in mind. Empathy is celebrated by almost every theoretical perspective. The capacity to put in somebody else's shoes and see the world, experience the world, sense the world as they do, without identifying with them, because that's a different process. So it's a process of going in and out to capture in a better way, in a deeper way, that perspective. And that is great. Whatever you do, emphasis should be made on empathy. Second, work on establishing goals that are actually built collaboratively and in a consensus way. Work with your client to determine what is it that is important for them, and how can you structure that, in a way that allows you to work in unison with the desires and expectations of the client. Then positive regard and affirmation.
Oh.
A lot of us believe that positive regard and affirmations, is accepting the client as they are. But I have to tell you this. If somebody says to you, I hear voices And they are really making me feel quite guilty. The typical response from most clinicians is, since when are you hearing these voices? What are they doing? When affirmation means establishing what the client is experiencing. So the first answer is not to evaluate, is not to assess, is to affirm. I hear you saying that you hear voices, and that makes you feel anxious. Tell me more about it. As opposite to, since when, when I was growing up in the field, my faculty would say, ask them if they are coming from within or from the outside. And they will assert that there was a clinical difference between them. If they were coming from the outside, the prognostic was much more positive. If they were from the inside, then that's a major issue. Today, we know that that's not true. But anyway, so the idea of assessing and evaluating as opposite to quote unquote affirming. And then in any moment of the counseling relationship, the counselor and the client may actually rub themselves wrong. You may say something that actually may seem offensive to the client, may reflect lack of understanding, may suggest deeper problems. And at that point, a rupture in the communication, a breakdown in the communication may occur. So training our students, for example, to actually identify rupture and take action in the moment by moment of the session creates a real opportunity to improve and strengthen the therapeutic relationship. Many of us don't know how to do that, and then we duck our heads as counselors, and we finish the session hoping that the client will come up next week, will come back next week, having forgotten whatever that bad moment was. Well, guess what? Sometimes they don't come back. Think about a client who comes in and says to you, there is a veteran. The number one assumption that most of my up and coming counselors and counselors in practice will immediately think about PTSD, depression, anxiety. And if you treat that person based on that assumption, you may lose that client. Yes, it is true that 30% in some of the worst case scenarios of the veterans may exhibit that type of symptomatology. But that means 3 out of 10. So 7 of those veterans may come in for issues such as readapting to civilian life, finding ways to secure a job, determining what kind of skills they have that can put forward to reinsert, as I said. But if you treat them as a quote unquote broken good, they may resent that. So the idea of ruptures becomes essential. And they will happen no matter what. Think about beginning of a therapeutic relationship. You are working with somebody you don't know from Adam. It's meant to happen that you will say something that may not suit well with that person. And you are doing it with the best intentions to get to know them. But in the process, they may feel upset. And if you notice some of the signs and behaviors that accompany a rupture, you will have a tool to intervene. Then managing countertransference. This idea that comes from the old, writings of Sigmund Freud. But it was right on target. We have a capacity to react back to the client's experience based on our own experiences and respond from there rather than from the client's experience. And then the reactance level. Some clients are, quote unquote, very introspective. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to be helped in the process of figuring out by themselves. Some others are hoping for more help, for more guidance, for more directions, and they will welcome your suggestions. So learning what the reactance level of your client is essential, because then you can tone down the way your help is offered to meet the client's preferences without creating a strong reaction against. Next. And then, of course, we have adaptations. Yeah, I talk about the reactance level, sorry for the duplication. Then stages of change. The stages of change have been around for a long time, Prochaska, Norcross, etc. But it's essential. Some of your clients will come to see you on a stage of pre-contemplation, meaning they don't think they have an issue. Some will come desperate for solutions. They're on the action stage. They want to do it. They don't know how. Help me accomplish that. Wouldn't be nice that everybody will come on that level, but that's not the case. And there is a sequence from pre-contemplation to contemplation all the way to action and even follow-up. But the main point here is, if you find what's the level of preparation for change of the client or disposition for change, you can tailor your approach to that person. For example, a person in pre-contemplation should not be offered a therapeutic intervention immediately. The work should be done to raise awareness about the issues and to challenge this idea that I don't have an issue. I don't know why they send me to a counselor. And help them understand where are the gaps and why thinking about doing something about it might be appropriate. And then you have preferences. We try to present to our clients with our model. Sounds great. With our way of intervention. Sounds fantastic. You are the expert, isn't it? Well, the problem is that for the most part, the expert on whatever they have, whether it is the issues, the concern, the skills, the strengths, is the client. They are the one who are experts on themselves. So balancing what you have, that's very lovely. Balancing what you have with the preferences of the client will make for a great way to improve the therapeutic relationship. The client will feel validated, the client will feel heard, the client will feel that whatever you are doing seems to match with their preferences. What kind of preferences? Would you like an active or less active counselor? Would you like to come once or twice a week? Will you like the sessions to last 50 minutes? Will you like... See, there are many different things. And at this point in life, you are not dealing with naive clients. They have done their Google search and their quote unquote comments on Reddit or whatever. So now they have some ideas and some suggestions of what may work best for them. Giving space for their preferences is essential. And by the way, there are a lot of possibilities. Well, the beautiful part of this is that we have even instruments to assess client preferences that they can fill out before coming to the session. And then culture. For many, many years, that was debatable. Not anymore. We do know that counselors of different cultures than their clients still can be effective. But respecting culture, demonstrating some knowledge about culture, having some cultural elements in your office, presenting yourself in a cultural, humble way, and striving to learn from the client about their culture has a powerful effect on outcome. And then coping style. Is this a person who likes to deal with issues in an active way or in a reflective way? Why is that important? Because if it's a person who likes to do active things, then using behavioral elements can be pretty good. Because the person can engage in organized, step-by-step actions. If the person is more reflective, insightful, giving them reflective type of elements may help the person to process and reach deeper elements. And then finally, religion and spirituality. As you know, there isn't any mental health profession right now or association that doesn't have a religion spirituality branch. We all realize that it's important to understand the religiosity or spirituality or lack of the client. And it's not that you need to transform yourself into a spiritual counselor, but you can actually, using culturally humble techniques, learn about the importance, how that affects the client, and even bring in somebody from the preferred religion or spiritual tradition of the client into the session to help understand better. Next. And we have developed, just because we understand that there are too many trainings on this, we develop a culturally based, moments of excellence, which is a formal training to help our counselors in training and even professionals to address these different dimensions that we just talk about. As you can see here, you have empathy, countertransference, positive regard and affirmation, even suicide prevention and counseling preferences. Next. And everything we do is clearly based on moments of excellence in a cultural perspective. Next. So remember, we talk about this, and the idea was, okay, so how do you know that what you are saying have any bearing on outcome? And for that, I would like to introduce Counselor Dassel One.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tasser Huang, and I'm a doctoral candidate in counselor education at the Pennsylvania State University. So to be honest with you, I feel huge time pressure. But from this slide, I'd like to introduce 3 great research outcomes that the great researcher Dr. Ulupiner, Dr. Zelekit, Dr. Paitel found from client outcomes. So the researchers investigated counselors' performance in terms of anxiety and depression symptoms. What they found is, yes, counselors are making statistically significant changes in terms of anxiety and depression, but then what makes the counseling effective? The researchers explored the factors explaining the symptom reduction, but then the research said counselors' gender, years of experience, and theoretical orientation, it did not account for their symptom reduction. So this is quite interesting. and it made researchers more think about the importance of microskills, trans theories, core skills. So if we go to the table in the next slide, it shows counselors' efficiency rates on anxiety and depression symptoms. So the efficiency of counseling outcomes means the given amount of sessions, to what extent, how fast, how quick the counselors make changes in terms of symptom reduction. When we look at the data, the counselor 10 was the top in terms of reducing the anxiety symptoms, and for the counselor 10 was the second for the depression symptoms. But then in terms of symptom reduction, not every counselor is doing great job for both areas. If we look at counselor 7, the counselor 7 was number 3 in terms of reducing anxiety symptoms. But if you look at the depression data, the depression was increased throughout the sessions. And this data is showed in the next figure 1. So if you look at the middle graph, counselor 7 was really great. Thank you, great to reduce the anxiety symptoms, but did not a very great job for the reduction of depression. So still, it's like a cornerstone research. There should be more research than why this difference occur and what made this difference. So, but still, we open the discussion. It could be different in terms of effectiveness and efficiency. The counselors, their individuality can involve in. So this is one example. If we go to the next example, so this study is about comparing counseling performance across international and domestic counselors in training. I will just straightforward to be about the results. So the research says there is no significant differences between the two groups, even though international students may have their own challenges. First, language. For most of them, English is their second language, and for the cultural differences, despite of these major challenges, international students made significant changes, and which could be equivalent to the domestic counselors in training. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So the researchers compared the intake and the termination session. You can see the symptoms has decreased throughout the session. So both groups made significant changes. And then if we look at the second graph and look at the slope, the extent of making changes, the two groups did not report significant differences. In the given amount of 5 sessions, both groups made significant changes, and their differences in efficiency, there was no differences, which is very encouraging for me, like as an international student. And this is another example of measuring counselors' performance. And let's go to the third example. This paper has not been published yet, but we are working on it. So for this research project, we explored the counseling outcome before the pandemic, in the transitioning, and after the pandemic. So I need your strong attention to this explanation. So in 2020, March 13th, the US government officially declared there is a COVID pandemic. So we explored the data. Before the pandemic, it was fully in person, and the transitioning period, like early January and February, the counseling practicum went well in person, but then we had to cease the counseling practicum during the COVID onset, and then resume the practicum with telemental health. in the next year, 2021 spring, it was fully telemental health. We compared these three periods, and then we want to know whether there's any differences in terms of their intake session, termination session, and in terms of the counseling efficiency and effectiveness. So if you go to the next slide, it's very complicated, but here's the thing, here's the key answer. So the data says, yes, counselors in training, they made great changes across those three periods, except one, academic distress during the transitioning period, except that specific sub-skill, the counselors in training made significant changes. And if we look at the table 3, the right side, the data says we made greater changes when we were doing in-person than during the transitioning period, which is sad. But then the good part is we were bouncing back from the transitioning to telemental health. So the difference between in-person and telemental health was not that much significant, but only two exceptions, depression and social anxiety. They said still in-person counseling was more effective than the telemental health. That is our ongoing research and findings from the client outcome studies. And now we can turn into the research informed practice.
Very good. Interestingly enough, we also develop an additional training on language of transformation, just because we see the need for this type of training. And we feel that based on our own data and research, clearly, these are effective elements to add and to help. I'm not going to go into the specifics, but I would like to say, number one, that thank you for listening. And let's go to the next one, which actually will give us some time for any of your questions or comments. Dr. Patel?
Any questions about what was presented on in the keynote? Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to unmute. We'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley Pechuk.
Dr. Zelikit, I know you're doing some fabulous work on looking at the effectiveness of counseling, but in a very formal way, which you had mentioned not a lot of people are doing. For new counselors or just counselors in the field, what are some, for lack of better words, some more informal ways that you would recommend measuring for effectiveness?
What a great question. There are a number of ways to do that. And nowadays, we have, quote unquote, a number of more manageable techniques. There are ways to assess, for example, a level of readiness for change earlier and correlate that with potential outcome if you adapt your intervention of the quote unquote things. And so we have, a major opportunity, especially because, and let me remind every one of you, when I ask, is counseling effective? The answer is not, it depends. And you may say, wait, what do you mean it's not, it depends? Who are you to assert that we are effective? Let me say this. most of the medical mental health interventions are actually, quote unquote, assumed to be effective to the tune of 30% effectiveness, 40%. If we show up at any medical conference and we say we have a therapeutic intervention that has been shown to be successful to the 40%, they will invite us out on the spot. So we are held to a much higher standard than the standards that they use to evaluate themselves. And even then, we have all this data. Now, one more thing for you, for me, for all of us. At the end of the day, we need the responsibility of demonstrating value. What you just heard from Dasor One is a summary of studies done only on counselors. Usually the studies you see out there are studies in which they pile us up with mental health professionals. So we can do case studies, we can do collection of case studies, we can do research, but more importantly, let's say you have a clinic. We have a team that can work with you to help you evaluate the performance. And it's not that we will steal the data and do whatever we want with. No, we will work collaboratively. So there are a number of opportunities moving forward, but the data we have so far is pretty strong, indicating that whatever we do, from practicum students up, and I love one of the comments on the chat that says, the micro skills are also important for professionals. Not only they are important, we have some professionals in the field who has developed whole programs, like Skill Center, for example, to help practitioners to really master the micro skills. Why? We learn them, and then we follow what I call the knowing, doing gap. We learn them, we get to the session, and we do whatever else. But we don't apply the most central element that trigger change. So working with Dr. Paitel, with Counselor Wang, has been a journey of a lifetime, because we are uncovering this type of information that is so darn powerful and is so darn uplifting for counselors. And I hope that you will join us and will find ways to help us advance this knowledge.
Dr. Zelikit, thank you so much for being here today as our keynote. We do have to stop in the interest of time. We have sessions starting at 10 a.m. We hope to see you in some of them, but we also understand, given how busy you are, that you may leave us. I'll make sure that everyone has your contact information, so if they want to connect and collaborate, that is available to them. But we thank you, and we thank Dossel for being here today for a wonderful presentation this morning.